Yo guys, what is up? Moxie here on a Borderlands 3 video, and today we are going over my boss killing Amara build. Now I originally wasn't going to make a build video for this, but I've used it on stream a bunch and people always ask if there's a link to this build, and I didn't have that, so I decided to make a video on it even though I wasn't planning on it. Now this is a boss killing build. It is different from Ricochet Witch or Bullet Witch in that its only focus is melting bosses as fast as possible, and is my fastest boss killing build that I have. Now, it does a lot of damage, but the survivability isn't as great as some of my other builds. It is still pretty solid though. Before we get into the build video, real quick, we are giving away codes to the Stream Team / PAX East exclusive like, follow, and obey skins and heads that come together. So if you're interested in being entered to get a skin for the like, follow, and obey skins, all you need to do is be subscribed and drop a comment on the video. With that, let's get into this kill and this build. So right now we're on Mayhem 4. We got pistol damage, and we're going to be using a double action skill. We'll get into why, but it is a big mechanic in this build. So real quick, we can slam. Let's do a cancel. Oh, just kidding, not going to cancel. Now we got our movement speed. We can melt Agonizer real quick. So yeah, it is a very, very fast boss killing build. There are a lot of weapons that you could use with this build, and we're going to be highlighting which ones I think work the best. Super, super awesome, guys. Let's get right into it. But that's alright. Oh my god! Oh my god! Alright, let's get right into this build. So this is a brief overview of the skill tree. Here is our blue tree, our red tree, and our green tree. Bada bing, bada boom. Now, the question that I get asked the most when using this build is, hey Moxie, why are you using your action skill 2 times in a row? Why are you doing that? Does that stack your weapon anointment? No, it does not. Does it stack Laid Bare on an enemy? No, it does not. Do you get double Wrath? No, you do not. What you do get is Transcend. 2 stacks of Transcend. This is awesome. It is why I named the build the way I named it. And that is because with 2 stacks of Transcend, we are going to get plus 54% critical hit damage. 54% critical hit damage on Amara, a character that doesn't need critical hit damage. Plus 54%, which is a crazy buff. We're also going to get a ton of accuracy, but that doesn't really matter. Plus 54% critical hit damage on top of all of the damage and all of the anointments that Amara has access to is wild, and is a good reason why this build melts every boss in this game. Now there are a few other mechanics that we're using here, but that is super awesome, and it is the reason we're going down all the way to Avatar. We don't really have much business with rush stacks, so Avatar allows us to use double stacks of Transcend, which is why we're going there. Now, for the rest of the build, there's nothing too groundbreaking going on here. We're getting fast hands for reload speed. More reload speed means more DPS. This reload speed alacrity is based off of rush stacks, and for a lot of boss kills, you're not going to have time to get as much rush stacks as you'd like to get real use out of this. Cooldown for bosses that have immunity phases, such as Tyrene, such as Troy. It's really nice to have your cooldown and your action skill up, because your action skill is the source of a ton of your damage, with your anointment proccing, with your dot proccing, with Laid Bare and Wrath. So action skill spam is awesome here. We don't need Ascendant because you're melting bosses. You can put pretty much whatever augment on your skill as you'd like. I just use Soul Set, but most bosses will be dead before you need healing. What's super awesome here is Wrath. Wrath is going to give us plus 40% gun damage after activating our action skill. Once again, this does not stack. And we're going to be hitting enemies with our action skill. Hitting enemies with your action skill is super important to proc Laid Bare, which is a multiplicative damage increase from all sources, which is awesome. Think of this as slag. Think of this as slagging a boss, and you're going to do a ton more damage to them. It's very noticeable when you hit an enemy with this and when you don't hit an enemy. There are a lot of enemies that get hit by this that like weirdly shouldn't. I mainly use Phase Cast against Graveward, but Graveward also takes damage from Phase Slam on the platform, which is weird, so you can proc that on him as well. From Rest, not the best skill, but we're focusing purely on DPS. That's going to give us fire rate, and if you're using a Malon weapon, it'll give you charge time. Now, Remnant, not needed for here, but if you haven't watched my overkill damage guide, Remnant has uncapped overkill damage, so sometimes when I'm feeling spicy, I'll go for a Remnant kill. If you shoot an enemy next to Trant or next to Gigamind with a Phase Slam Wedding Invitation, you'll spawn a 10 million damage Remnant Orb that'll one-shot those enemies. So if you're getting bored of shooting at the boss and killing the boss, you can shoot at enemies that aren't the boss and still kill the boss. So it's a fun thing to have in here. Not needed for most boss kills though. And then Avatar is going to allow us to get our double stack of Transcend. More rush stacks, but we're not using a Phase Zerker, so it doesn't really matter. Here we're grabbing Anima for the dot damage on us that'll last longer. This is a driver build, by the way. Driver Elemental Projector, my bread and butter. And then Tempest, we're going to get bonus elemental damage. This is a no-brainer in any Amara build. Really great pickup. Fun fact, if you didn't know, the plus 20% shock damage is actually plus 10%. So kind of unfortunate there, but it's only plus 10%. Next, we're getting Personal Space. Now, Personal Space is an amazing skill. I think it flies under the radar. It's going to give you bonus damage up to 36%, 12% per rank. Fun fact. By the way, if you're good about, I think you might learn something right here. If you do learn something from this video, make sure to drop a like, guys. Really help me out. It's not actually plus 12%. It's actually plus 18% per rank, which is amazing. And the Personal Space range that you get bonus damage is really, really long. So it's like about from me to this trailer thing is the range that you're still gonna get a bonus from Personal Space. So even if you're far away from a boss, still grab this ability because it's really good. The way Personal Space works with bonus damage is the more damage that you're doing, the more bonus damage you're going to get out of it. Very similar to Forceful Expression. Because we're fully invested into damage here, Personal Space makes their damage even greater, which is awesome. Next, we're grabbing Samsara. Now, we're mostly only ever going to get 2 stacks from this, which is 10% gun damage, which is nice. But it's also 10% max health regen per second, which is kind of our only health regen, besides this 2% to 4% health regen. Now, that's not amazing. This build doesn't have great survivability. I wouldn't run with this build through the takedown unless you're being very careful, because it doesn't have a lot of survivability because we're not getting sustainment. What this build does is rips bosses apart. That's why we're not invested into helping hands here. Now, arms deal I put points into just because if I want to use a splash damage weapon, I can, and the splash damage reduction is nice. This build works with a lot of different weapons. In a second, we're going to get to what weapons I like. But if you do want to use a splash damage weapon, this gives you the ability to do that. And then, of course, Mindfulness. Plus 3 points into Mindfulness for 6 out of 3. Amara scales her damage from the driver class mod off of her movement speed. If you watch any of the kills that I'm showcasing during this video or showcasing right now, you will see that when I'm shooting, I'm maintaining full movement speed to the best of my ability. It takes a little bit of getting used to, but once you get used to maintaining your movement speed and your momentum when you fire at bosses. You will notice a great payoff in your damage. That's pretty much it for the build. Nothing too groundbreaking there. If you don't want arms deal, you can put those points more into reload speed. Rush dash effectiveness doesn't mean anything here because we don't really care about action skill damage because we're just doing weapon damage. And you can grab Dread or Deep Well for more magazine size, but it's not needed. So that was the build. Now for weapons, some of my favorite weapons to use on this build are conference calls. Conference calls and carriers are both really, really nice. This is the spot where you farm for a conference call and a carrier. This bad boy right here, Mr. Hightower, he drops it. After you kill a few enemies here, he'll jump down from there and you can kill him to get either conference calls or carriers or randomized roll drops or the Scorpio gun, which you should throw away. Now, these weapons, conference calls, are amazing for this, and there's a little rule of thumb that I like to use when I'm using a conference call, and is if that enemy is bigger than Trant, use a conference call. Use a conference call on any enemy that is bigger than Trant. If they are Grave Ward, Tyrene, Wotan, Agonizer, Rampager, conference call is going to be your go-to. If they are Trant or smaller, like Giga Nerd or Trant or Troy, I tend to stay away from using the conference calls just because of the amount of projectiles and overlapping hitboxes that you can get with conference calls on bigger weapons. Make them do a lot more damage. So that's my rule of thumb. Other weapons you can use here: Wedding Invitation. Cutsman's also great on this build, but everyone uses the Cutsman, so I thought we'd showcase not using it. Now, you can use whatever shield you want here. If you want to do the most damage, I'd recommend either a low-level Sidorak or a low-level Brawler's Ward, because when they're depleted, you get bonus gun damage, but not everyone likes using level 1 shields, so I figured I just wouldn't showcase it. We already do a ton of damage without it, but if you want to do even more, Brawler's Ward will give you like plus 25% gun damage while it's depleted. Now, there are some other shields that give you more damage. Amara does not work with amp shields. Amp shields only give you amp damage when your shield is full. When you dot yourself with an amp shield, you cannot do amp damage. So don't even think about using an amp shield. Your grenade can be whatever you want. If you're going to want to do the most damage, you should use an It's Piss to debuff enemies. But once again, I just wanted to show off that you don't need like every little piece of gear to make this build work. If you have an It's Piss with anointed damage, that is great, but you can put on a blue grenade with bonus action skill and damage. It doesn't matter, you don't need to throw grenades, but if you want to do the most, grab an It's Piss. Lastly, Spiritual Driver class mod and Elemental Projector. Whatever suffix you want on your projector is fine. I pretty much use this one for a lot of my things because I've got shotgun damage, movement speed, and magazine size on it, which is great, but as you know, I'm not usually sliding. The sliding is nice, but you don't need it. And then a Spiritual Driver with weapon damage and bonus damage to whatever you'd like to use is great with Mindfulness. I've got some sniper ones and some Atlas weapon critical if I want to use the carrier. Now, the carrier is the highlighted weapon in Ricochet Witch. This build cannot put out as many projectiles with it using the multiple action skill and elements as Ricochet Witch. Ricochet Witch performs really, really well with the carrier. This build cannot make as many projectiles, but it can do as much, if not more, single target damage, just because the projectiles that will be hitting will be doing a ton of damage. So very cool weapon here. For the carrier, I always recommend a bonus element on it for the extra projectile. And for your conference calls, Phase Slam, Phase Cast are going to be your go-tos. This build will cheese every boss in this game or named enemy. If you want to farm for something, this is a great build for it. If you want to do a takedown or slaughter shaft, don't use this build. Use Ricochet Witch or Bullet Witch or Melee Witch, one of those builds. This is my build that I've been using for a while. It's super reliable, it kills bosses, and it's a really great farm because you can get 2 of the weapons for this build just by coming to this area, which is on Electricity in Promethea, right here by Judge Hightower. You spawn there, come all the way back here. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. I will catch you in the next one. Peace!